My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host, and today we'll be looking at the state of wetlands in Uganda and the ongoing interventions by the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA. Well, we know there's been a debate going on about steps being taken by NEMA to contain what they call degradation of wetlands. Now, wetlands have been identified as key in sustaining our environment, and their degradation has contributed greatly, according to experts and NEMA, to the current climate change crisis that we are facing. So I have officials from NEMA here in studio to share with us the state of our wetlands, what do we have, what have we lost, but then also to understand the interventions that they have been undertaking. We know NEMA has been conducting evictions in different wetlands around, in and around Kampala. So we'll be understanding the extent. Are they done now, or they're still going on with this particular effort? My guest, Mr. Wilbert Ikilai. He's the Manager, Environmental Education and Advocacy at NEMA. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, Kenneth. Good evening to the listeners. I'm happy to be hosted here.
Thank you so much for making time to be with us. Mr. Busobozi Emmanuel, he's the Principal Wetlands Officer at the same institution, NEMA. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, moderator, and good evening, listeners.
Right, be part of this show. Share with us your experience with the ongoing evictions by NEMA interventions, how wetlands are being affected via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. Please don't send an audio clip, just text us, and the guests here in the studio will be responding to you. Let me begin with you, Mr. Busobozi Emmanuel, as a Principal Wetlands Officer. Can you give us a picture? Where are we in terms of wetland coverage in this country? Because from time to time we see an atlas that comes out that tells us we had these numbers of wetlands, this particular square meters, because this and this has happened. This is what we have now. Share with us that picture.
Thank you so much, Kenneth, moderator, and our dear listeners. It's a pleasure to have this conversation, especially regarding this sensitive issue of wetlands. So, currently, the data set we're using for the coverage of wetlands is as of 2021. So apparently we have approximately the actual percentage of Ugandan coverage, like national coverage, is 9.3%.
9.3%.
9.3%, which is equivalent to 22,457.4 square kilometers. That is intact wetlands. Now, out of that is intact, but wetlands have been reducing, and we've lost an equivalent of 4.7% of Uganda's surface area, which is equivalent to 11,305.1 square kilometers.
All right. When you look at those statistics, are we reducing? Are the wetlands reducing at a high rate? Are they reducing at a slow pace? And also, if you can give us the factors, why are our wetlands reducing in this manner, and what does it mean for us as a country?
Thank you so much. So I'll give you a little bit of history about wetland coverage in the country. So the data set we use as the baseline is of 1994. So 1994, Uganda's wetland coverage was 15.6% of the Uganda surface area.
15.6%.
15.6%.
Okay.
Which was equivalent to 37,559.4 square kilometers. Since then, we realized the wetland coverage was reducing, and due to several factors that we'll talk about, by 2008, we had come to 10.9.
10.9.
Then when we assessed again in 2015, we had 8.9. Now that is the lowest I can remember. So in 2015, this is what through mapping, by the way, mapping nationally.
So since 2015, we have not done another
since
study.
2015, there has been a little increase, and that has been a result of the efforts of the government through the the principal agency, which is NEMA, coordinating with other agencies like the Wetland Management Department at the Ministry of Water and Environment, working with the lead agencies, district environmental officers to ensure that we recover, because that the drive there, like we rejuvenated to ensure that we recover the lost wetlands. And right now, as we speak, the data of 2021 mapping is 9.3%. So there has been a shift from 8.9 in 2015 to 9.3%.
All right. Very quickly, if I may ask, who has been taking our wetlands?
Thank you so much. So apparently, I'll say as Ugandans, we are all responsible for the reduction in wetland coverage. Because wetlands are located in different areas of this country. And when we did the assessment, we found at least in each area there has been an activity, 1 or 2 or 3, which has encroached and degraded wetland areas, leading the reduction in the wetland coverage. So I'll say, more especially people have encroached on wetlands. Areas which are considered to be wetlands are characterized, and that has led the reduction. There are some activities in particular which we know. There is settlement, building of factories, there is cultivation. So those activities have heavily encroached on the wetlands, contributing to the reduction in wetland coverage.
All right. Now, let's shift our gears and hear from Mr. Iklai. You know, your colleague does give the factors that are responsible for the wetland coverage reduction, and NEMA has been undertaking efforts to actually to restore some of these wetlands. But some people have been saying too little, too late. That's what has been said. Given the figures that your colleague has shared, you can see at a certain point you are not working. Suddenly you are waking up. It seems there's some pressure coming in from somewhere else, which would mean that NEMA is sleeping on a job.
Yeah, Ken, first of all, thank you for the question, but then I wouldn't really say that NEMA has been sleeping on the job. NEMA as a government and also other agencies have been really working hard. But of course, sometimes some of this effort, people may not see them, but we have been engaging the different groups and different communities, like we've had regional engagements in different regions. We've had in Kigezi, we have had in Busoga, we're working with Operation Wealth Creation, and then other lead agencies like the Ministry of Water and Environment, in trying to, first of all, create awareness for the communities to begin appreciating alternatives to using wetlands. Instead of being in the wetlands, we are trying to encourage them that, like, if you're talking about rice growing, we'll talk about upland rice, and then now the government has come with a number of options. Say, for example, the PDM, Myoga, the youth lively. So we are talking to the different communities, engaging them to get to those options and leave the wetlands. That is one of them. Already the government of Uganda, through the Ministry of Water and Environment, has done a lot. Say, for example, we have already a gazette of all the wetlands in the country. And by doing that, we are trying to tell people that, look here, where you say, because there is a question most Ugandans always begin saying, you know, we don't know where the wetland is, what, something like that. But already a gazette is in place. And that alone is showing that the government is taking a measure and something is happening. There are laws that have been put in place. And these laws, we have been trying to popularize them by making them to come to be translated into the local dialect, so that people begin appreciating. But also some level of enforcement has been done.
All right.
And all these are efforts. Not that NEMA is sleeping on job, no.
All right.
But also working with other lead agencies.
All right. Your colleague, Mr. Busobozi, hinted on how wetlands are being degraded. And one of the things he talked about is constructions that is going on in wetlands, including of factories. Now, the little that I know about the NEMA Act is that no one can construct to set up such key projects in the wetlands without a permit from NEMA. Shouldn't we say that you are accomplices? You are the ones actually issuing these licenses to these people to set up these factories? And then not only do these factories, take up spaces in the wetlands, they also, emit out gases, but also the solid waste, the bad liquid that keeps oozing out. I don't know how they call it. Is it silt?
Effluent.
Effluent. It all goes into our water bodies. So we should hold NEMA accountable also.
Honestly, Ken, to be honest here, when you look at our communities and when you look at the people who are in the wetlands, who are even encroaching and building in the wetlands, it is not that these people do not understand what they are doing. They know what they are doing. That is why you will find people backfilling the wetlands at night.
It's not easy.
They backfill the wetlands at night. They also do constructions at night. That means that they are aware of the consequences of the law.
And what I'm saying, NEMA should not be sleeping.
Yes, that is why
the
reason why we are regulating, and that is why people fear and they do things at night. Now that
so for you at night you are sleeping?
Of
well
course,
aware that these people do things at night?
Let me tell you, Ken, you really see that, yes, regulation is done, but then there are some corners people try to do things because they don't want the law to get them. So that's why you'll find a lot of work, a lot of constructions are done behind and in a hidden way. But NEMA has always responded. Our team is always responding, and we have got certain some of the suspects who are involved have always been brought on book. You've always seen some of them on the press, but there are so many others that we cannot bring on in an open.
Right.
But there's a lot of effort that is going on with NEMA and the partners. Number of them, Ministry of Water and so many others that I may not be able to mention here, but we are working with them to ensure that this is checked and it is happening.
All right. Let's hear from Mr. Busobozi. Mr. Busobozi, NEMA has been undertaking a number of activities to actually enforce the act, to get people out of the wetlands. First of all, I want people to understand, why is it important to protect these wetlands? But also there are people who are thinking out there that you only go after the poor people around, Lubiji, the people who are poor, but you leave the rich who have factories, who have big buildings set up in wetlands. Mind you, they also say they get the permits from you. They actually tell us that, look, my building was approved by NEMA. There was an environment assessment impact study done, and the NEMA said we are good to go.
Thank you so
Why
much.
should we protect the environment?
Thank you so much, Ken.
Why should we protect the wetlands?
So, thank you so much, and I think that
If you can come a little bit closer to the microphone.
yes, thank you so much, Ken. So, one of the things, why wetlands, first of all? So, wetlands play unique functions, environmental functions, both ecological and social, that no other ecology can do. So they are special in nature, and we are so happy and glad and blessed to have them here. That one I want to let you know, and the listeners. Now, the functions that wetlands plays, we cannot even artificially model them out because they play natural functions, and as you know, natural functions can sometimes be very difficult to replicate or even receive the efficiency that you can receive with the natural function. So first of all, let me talk about water filtration. So wetlands are actually reserves for our water.
Okay.
Now, one thing they do is that they do natural filtration of the water. And then the treatment of this water is done in a way, the efficiency is so high that naturally we may hardly achieve that. And at no cost, I would say. So the only cost is that we have to conserve the wetland to have our water treated. I'll give you an example, because people around Kampala, everyone knows Nakivo wetland. So Kampala the terrain is hilly.
7 hills.
Yes, the 7 hills. So you can imagine when it rains, the runoff from all these hills moves and ends up in Nakivubo wetland.
Nakivubo wetland.
Yes. Nakivubo wetland also borders Lake Victoria, which we all know is our source of drinking water. Now, Nakivubo wetland does the natural filtration of this water, because if we were to filter all this water artificially, I think we would not manage. So the wetland does filtration. It removes the nutrients, it removes all the debris, all the things that are carried, and eventually the water ends in the lake when it is filtered. Now, when you reduce the size of that wetland, and you still have the amount of stormwater generated and the runoff on these hills, what happens? You end up having a polluted lake. And as I can tell you, Nakuru Wetland sits at Murchison Bay. And if you go to Murchison Bay, you'll see that actually the lake is heavily polluted with green color, which in English or in science we call phytoplankton or algal blooms. So that bloom is a very, very good indicator that your source of water is polluted.
And now, that begs the question, apart from telling us the water is polluted,
Yes.
what are you doing? Somebody is going to ask.
Yes, so that is the reason you see all these efforts, concerted efforts between NEMA and other lead agencies to ensure that we conserve our wetlands.
So what have you been able to do?
So
Take us through. You had operation recently.
Yes.
How much have you saved? How much is yet to be saved? Are there any other particular areas that you're going after?
So we're not just saving wetlands, but we're working with Ugandans to conserve.
Okay.
Yes. So we're not saving wetlands. We are conserving wetlands, and conserving wetlands requires concerted effort because all of us are stakeholders. The current drive which you've seen around central Uganda, which is I'll talk about Kampala, Wakiso, and Mukono, is to ensure that because here the effects of degradation have already been felt. For example, let's talk about the shoreline. The wetlands which are near the shoreline or the shores of Lake Victoria, people had started encroaching on those areas. When the lake water levels increased or raised, what happens? People's properties, lives were at risk, people lost property, so there was economic loss and devastation. So one of the things we've done is to ensure that we do sensitization, to ensure that people who are living in low-lying areas, they voluntarily leave those areas because naturally water claims back its land.
Well, have you been able to knock out some of those buildings, some of those settlements that have been put near the shorelines?
Of course, as
because that will be sustainable.
Yes, of course, we are doing it using different approaches. So one of them, like I talked about, we do sensitization, we do mapping, okay? Now, there are areas which have been heavily degraded, that our services or our efforts is to save both human life and environment. So there we issue restoration orders, which are given to people who are found to be occupied, have encroached on those ecological areas, and they are given time to leave.
All right. There's a beautiful building somewhere on the shores of Lake Victoria. If I may, must be even inside Lake Victoria. It's owned by one of the rich men around town here. Occasionally we see water actually going to that side, but that building is still there, and you know it was constructed when you are actually watching as NEMA, and that seems to be one of the issues people complain about. You allow people to construct and then you come and destroy. Where are you when they're constructing?
Thank you, Kenneth, and our dear listeners. So NEMA does not allow anybody, does not permit anybody to build in a wetland. That's what I want to tell you.
Or the shores.
To encroach.
Okay, to encroach.
Yeah, what is encroach?
Okay.
So we do not facilitate whatsoever encroachment on wetlands.
But the people get permits from your offices.
Sure. So, as a principal agency responsible for regulating, monitoring, supervising the natural environment, so any development that happens is supposed to be regulated. That means there's a procedure under which somebody has to make an application. Now, I'll talk about wetlands in particular.
Okay.
One thing I want to let our dear listeners know that effective 2nd September 2021, the government of Uganda suspended issuance of wetland user permits, which implies that nobody since then has been issued a wetland user permit. Reason is we want to ensure that we conserve the remaining wetlands. Now, that is suspension, is not like stopping. So there is, until further notice, the government will pronounce itself at the time when they feel it's okay. But as of now, there is no issuance of wetland permits. So anybody who is, or any individual or entity that is reclaiming a wetland is reclaiming it illegally, and the law will act on course.
All right. Let's hear from Mr. Iklai now. We are actually told there are certain activities that are permitted to be undertaken in wetlands, implying that people can live with wetlands as long as they doing certain things apparently which are sustainable. Can you take us through that? If I have a wetland on my piece of land and there is something that I want to do with it, the president has been talking about fish farming, but we know there are people also grow some crops that come out well in wetland areas, such things including rice. What do I do? Can NEMA permit me to do those kind of activities?
Yeah. Thank you, Kenneth. There are some activities that the law permits, the Act permits, and they are permitted. Say, for example, when you talk about fish ponds, it's allowed by the law, but then it has to go through a regulatory process within which NEMA has to first look at. You do the application through NEMA, then they guide the process. You just don't go and begin sinking the fish ponds without the guidance of NEMA. But also there are other permitted activities, say for example, because in a wetland, there are areas that are kind of no-go zone. Then there are areas where like regulated activities can be allowed, and these activities can be like simple growing or like of vegetables within the regulated areas that do not naturally affect the setup of the wetland, because the law does not allow activities that would come and then divert the natural course of the wetland, maybe like opening channels, erecting structures. The law does not allow that. But some activities that can be regulated can be, say, for example, the recreational activities that are in other zones that are out of the regulated area. Things like getting like the papyrus for making the mats, you can be able to issues to do with the medicinal herbs, research activities. Some of those activities can be allowed. The law is very clear under Schedule 6 of the National Environment Act, and it clearly brings out all those activities that are allowed, but they have to be regulated to some extent. So it is not that completely it is prohibited. No, there are some activities that are regulated, and that is why we are saying that it is very important if your land extends towards a wetland and you want to utilize it, there you can get to NEMA, you can get to the DNR, District Natural Resource Officers or Environment Officers within your areas of jurisdiction, and they can be able to guide. And in each area of where people operate, at least we have Environment Officers, District Natural Resource Officers, and then, of course, as NEMA, we also have the regional offices. We have one in Mbarara, we have Hoima, we have Mbale, we have Lira. So if you need more information to be supported to utilize part of your wetland, kindly reach us in our regional offices, or even reach the district or town urban councils where those officers will be based.
All right.
And you'll be supported.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We're going to go for a break, but we do expect you to give us feedback. Share with us your view, your question or comment via the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. When we return, we'll share some of the points that are being made by members of the public as we continue looking at the state of the environment, state of the wetlands in our country, and what the National Environment Management Authority is doing, to protect those that still exist, but also ensure that those that we have lost are recovered. Spectrum continues after this. Thank you indeed for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are focusing on the state of wetlands in Uganda and the ongoing interventions by NEMA, the National Environment Management Authority. My guest, Mr. Wilbert Ikelai, he's the Manager, Environmental Education and Advocacy, and Mr. Busobozi Emmanuel, who is the Principal Wetlands Officer. Now, very quickly, gentlemen, there's what we have had people complaining about and saying, this wetland is on my private land. It does not belong to government, and therefore you should not touch it. Some people have said this wetland belongs to the Kabaka because the land I'm sitting on is under the Kabaka's, administration, Buganda Land Board. Is there a situation where a wetland can be private and I am free to do whatever I want with it?
Thank you so much, Ken, and to our dear listeners. So, first of all, I want everybody listening to know that according to the law, all wetlands, rivers and lakes, riverbanks and lake shores are held in trust by the government for the people of Uganda. So it means the government of Uganda, which is in power, protects those areas for everybody. So that means they cannot be owned. Now, I want to go to your next question. Wetlands on private land. So the law states that the principal agency, which is NEMA, and all our lead agencies, for us, what we do regulation of occupation. You remain with the land rights, but what you do there is what is regulated, monitored, and supervised. So, which implies that you can have a title, and in the middle of your land is a wetland. So for us, the land is yours, but whatever you do on that wetland has got to be regulated, supervised, monitored, to ensure that we conserve the ecological functioning of these protected ecosystems. Now, if there's anything somebody wants to do in a protected ecosystem, like a wetland, that person has to go through a procedure which involves making applications through the principal agency, who is NEMA, and contacting agencies for advice, because that one is there free and it's not paid for. So if you are confused about what to do, reach out to the lead agencies. We have NEMA, we have the Wetland Management Department at the Ministry of Water and Environment, who is the lead agency actually for wetlands. We have district natural resource officers and environmental officers, and these are mandated to provide advice on what to be done. Now, when it comes to application, those ones are applied, and there's a system which is now online. Anybody can apply from wherever they are, and they get assisted. We also have compliance assistance, which is, as a NEMA, we provide. They can guide you on what to do and what not to do, so that there is that clarity. But in matters of ownership, the land rights are there, but what you do as occupation in the wetlands is what is regulated.
All right. Mr. Kilai, you want to add on?
Yes, I just wanted to add on and say that, yes, one thing I see people trying to, if someone owns land that extends up to the wetland, somebody begins saying, no, my land, I don't want you people to come and begin dictating how. But the law is very clear, as my colleague has already said. You'll have the right to own the land, but when it comes to use, it is regulated, and that land, all the wetlands, rivers, lakes belong to the government of Uganda. So if you have to utilize it, we all are responsible in terms of ensuring that we use these resources sustainably, because there is a future that we are protecting.
If that land belongs to the government of Uganda, that particular piece of land where the wetland is, why is it then that the government of Uganda actually, reflects this on my title, and it's part and parcel of the title? It's my land. The title is in my name, and the acreage includes that piece of wetland.
Yes, normally when the government gives, say for example, those titles you talk about, there are conditions that are attached. And those are user conditions that are attached. You may find that they will tell you if it is a land that extends up to the lakeshore, they will tell you that you have to get a lakeshore user permit. You have to respect maybe the 200-meter distance. They normally give, but conditions are attached.
Okay.
And those conditions must be respected. If you violate them, then the regulators will come in for you.
All right.
Yes.
Very quickly, let's reflect on some of the comments that are coming in from the listeners, and I'll begin with this one who says, your moderator is not asking tough questions, and is saying, let them talk about Sudhir Ruparelia and the activities that he is doing. You've heard about what Sudhir is actually doing when it comes to issues of degradation. There have been claims that he's constructing in a lake somewhere, that he's is not following guidelines. We'll hear from you on that particular comment. We have another comment coming in. Why doesn't NEMA evict the Chinese who have encroached on Rueda wetlands, growing rice and irresponsibly mining sand? That's another comment there that comes in. Then we have another comment coming in. Please help us to open up the water. These people will run from the deepest swamp in Palisa automatically. Somebody is saying that open up the water and it takes away people from the swamp. I don't know if that's a good strategy. Good evening, Spectrum. This is urgent during construction of Palisa Kumi Road. UNRWA together with Arab contractors blocked water from Kibuku. This has caused a sudden increase in rice growing in a feared swamp in Oladot due to less water in the swamp compared to that of 2015. He's the same person who is actually saying help them and open the water so that the people will run away from that particular wetland. Then we have another comment. Thanks, good people, but our natural water encatchment areas like River Ruizi in western Uganda, feeding Kagera, that ends in Lake Victoria, is gone. The Bugolobi watershed is now turned into a lagoon. Does NEMA need more of such in Uganda? That's a comment that comes in from MM. Then we have another comment from Dina, listening in from Makindye, who says, excuse and more excuses. One thing government parastatals are good at doing, please take accountability. What is it that you are doing as NEMA? We are not seeing any tangible outputs. Buildings are being raised in wetlands every day. Then we have another comment. Good evening, Kenneth and the listeners. That man who claims that all Ugandans are responsible for wetland reduction is missing a point. Can I remind him that Ugandans pay him for the job to protect them, but they simply sleep on the job. They license others to destroy the wetland. He knows so many examples. Stop being arrogant and do the job you are paid to do. Well, that's a feedback you're getting. Another comment comes in from Joan, who is listening in from here in Kampala. Says, hello, Radio 1, thanks for the show. Where can one get the updated maps of gazetted wetlands within Kampala, Wakiso, and Impigi? When we visit your offices, the bureaucracy there is prohibitive. It's like you don't want to access the maps. You don't want us to access the maps. Well, those are some of the comments that are coming in. Very quickly, let's respond to them and then also follow up with other areas of discussion.
Yeah. Thank you, Ken. Let me respond on the Sudhir issue. I'll also talk about River Ruizi. Now, the claims have always come, and our team has always tried to get to the ground. But what I see is that sometimes I think some of the people begin talking about big wigs, big what, but then in our work, we do not discriminate.
But we have not seen you taking down the big wigs. That's what the people want to see.
We cannot at a certain time how we do our work, we may not be able to publish every big wig that we handle because of issues of confidentiality, some of the issues that are in courts of law that we are handling. And, it is a procedural thing sometimes. And when some of these cases of the big wigs that are in courts of law, we may not tell the public, but they want to know about it. So sometimes it's preempting. Some of them we have handled, but we cannot come and say this is a list of the big wigs we have handled. So it's not professional. So we handle them, but we do not, the bottom line is that we do not discriminate. We handle, and sometimes when we handle big wigs, the so-called the big wigs, we don't see people like Ken, you talking about it here. We only get the negative side of it. We would also love to hear you talk about what we have done.
Give us examples of the big wigs you've dealt with.
I may not be able, because of the confidentiality and the professional way, I may not be able to give
confidentiality
you
when you are acting in the interest of the public.
There are certain things that we may be handling, others are in courts of law.
There's somebody who has actually said you're paid to do this job. So
yes,
confidentiality, if you're acting in the best interest of the public,
yes,
why do you hide? Why do you want to keep things
environment management, Ken, is a very technical area that sometimes you just it's a procedure.
No.
Sometimes
When
some of these
when
issues.
somebody has constructed in the wetlands and you're quite clear that it's not you, NEMA, who approved it, you go and knock down their building.
They don't do it like that.
How do they do it?
There are procedures that are supposed to be followed. If the assessment team has gone and found out, yes, it's happening, there are preliminary stages. Is it true it's happening? The assessment is done, confirmation, engagement, all those are preliminary steps.
As the construction goes on.
No,
That's what we have been saying.
we even issue stop orders. We have always issued a number of stop orders and we follow them. So this is sometimes happening. But then the bottom line is that we do not discriminate when we're handling these issues of degraders, the so-called degraders. We do not handle that. We do not discriminate. So kindly just get to know that we handle as per the requirements of the law. Then in terms of River Ruizi, a lot has been done and more is yet to be done. For example, 2025, we have planned for a campaign that is going to be intertwined with the planning and the preparation of World Environment Day 2025. We are taking the campaign along River Ruizi districts to engage those communities so that people begin now appreciating the need for River Ruizi and the role River Ruizi does. And we want to engage them up to that period when now, even at the time we shall be celebrating World Environment Day 2025. The engagement is going to begin in January and it's going to run up to June, and even other efforts to ensuring that River Ruizi is restored is already planned. But also previously we have been having engagement with other partners, Ministry of Water and Environment and other CSOs within the area. But of course, restoration can't be a one day issue. It's a procedural thing and it continues, and we feel with this kind of effort things will change. In terms of what we were talking about, or Ladoto, yes, somebody was trying to talk about release the water and then these people will get it. But of course, all these are issues to do with the prior engagement with the communities, but also working with the local district, the district local government to ensure that, yes, communities begin appreciating the importance of this Oladoto for them. And initially they were doing rice growing, but right now, because of the engagements we have had at our regional office with the teams there, I see the numbers now reducing and people are leaving now Oladoto, and I believe in the near future we shall be good to go and that place will rejuvenate.
All right. You have a number of issues to respond to. Mr. Sobas, if you can also come in.
Yeah, the first one, I think, thanks so
Closer
much,
to the microphone,
and
please.
Dear listeners. So there was a comment about access to the Gazette. Yes. So the government currently has a Wetland Gazette, and I'm happy that people out there now know. So accessing that Gazette is through different ways or approaches. In NEMA Library, we have a copy, which is public. Anybody can come at their free time and access the Gazette, but you're not allowed, unfortunately, to take it. So it's a library copy. The Gazette is
is that the only point where you have this information?
So the wetland management,
in the library.
The Wetland Management Department, which is the custodian actually of the Gazette, because the Gazette was generated by the Ministry of Water and Environment, specifically under the Wetland Management Department. So they also have soft copies, but also if a copy can also be accessed through the Uganda publishing and printing area, which costs some money. So it's not very expensive, I know, but those are the approaches which I know where somebody can access the Gazette. But we don't issue out gazettes, and also currently it is still a process because it is in 2013, so 2023 when it was launched. So there's a process to reduce the volume according to the catchment basins, so that it can be uploaded online for public access.
Well, the world is going digital, and even the government of Uganda agencies are going digital. Why can't I find this information on your website if I want to get this information about the wetland cover, which area is a wetland? The information should just be a click away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kate. So that information, I agree with you. It should be accessible through the NEMA website. We have a team who normally updates the website, and I'm sure that that's something we can do. It's not a very complicated issue. They can update but also one thing is that we handle so many issues. So our website is open for if you want to get more information about the natural environment.
All right. We have more comments coming in. Just a suggestion, can NEMA simply demarcate the wetlands like UNRA? It will solve a lot. That's Bob in Kampala, who is saying, can you just gazette them and, put marks probably and say this is a wetland and you're not allowed to encroach here? Can you do that? That's one other proposal that is coming in from the listeners. And somebody is also asking, there are people whose houses were demolished and were evicted from areas like Lubigi. What is their fate? Have they gone forever? Are they coming back? What have you been able to see? And why wait for people to first build before you react? That's another comment that comes in from Moses. Then we have somebody who wants to know what is the final stand of NEMA on the issues of wetland, because every other year you keep on complaining about wetlands, and it seems to be not going away. That's a comment from Rashida.
Yeah, let me start with what is the final stand of NEMA. You see, NEMA as a regulator cannot say that, we can't say that this is our final stand, but we as regulators, as long as either the communities continue encroaching on wetlands, NEMA will not stop engaging. We shall continue engaging. But the position of NEMA is that we should be able to leave the wetlands, to rejuvenate for the betterment of all of us. Because now when you see, for example, when it is flooding in Kampala here, wetlands are very, very good catchment areas of water and hold the water that would be running now, that is now running to our roads. But because we have cleared wetlands, we all suffer the flooding and we all face it. They will not say, Ken, because you work in Radio 1, the floods should not touch you. No. It will affect all of us. So as NEMA, we shall continue talking about it, and we are encouraging all Ugandans and all those people who are in wetlands that leave the wetland. And that is our position. It's a government position. Leave the wetlands to rejuvenate so that we shall all enjoy the environment and the life that we need. That is one. And then demarcation of wetlands. The ministry, demarcation of wetlands is an ongoing process. It already started. The Ministry of Water and Environment and partners are working in demarcating wetlands. Already you may see those white pillars somewhere. It's an ongoing process, and I feel because Uganda is large, I think at a certain point we shall reach the what we really say, yes, now at least everybody is able to see where they are. And then now issues of people whose houses were demolished, what is the fate?
Lubigi and all those surrounding areas, what is their fate?
Emma can talk about it.
So
are they coming back? Have they gone forever? What are you seeing?
So in terms of restoration exercise, we understand some people were evicted from the wetland. So that is like the primary stage of wetland restoration. So our objective is to ensure that the wetland recovers. So what I can say is that nobody is allowed to come back into the area that has been restored. So, and we're working with the community. We've had several sensation meetings. We've had engagement with the leaders to ensure that we work together, protect the Lubigi, because Lubigi is one of the most sensitive wetlands we have around Kampala, more especially in the northern side, as it receives the waste from the waste treatment facility for National Water and Sewerage Corporation up there, and it drains up, it follows up to Lake Kyoga. So it's a very big system. That what you see here is just the start, but it goes up to River Mayanja and Tier 2. So we want to make sure that we mobilize everybody, we protect that wetland because it is very significant for like the inputs I talked about, filtration of water, now treatment of waste, and all those functions that we desire to sustain.
All right. We have more comments coming in, but we are drawing towards the close of this particular program. And as we want to understand now the capacity of NEMA. You know, the wetlands are in different parts of this country. We have wetlands, you've heard people talking about River Ruizi, probably there are wetlands in West Nile, in the north, in the east, here in the center. Are you well prepared? Are you well facilitated? Do you have the necessary manpower to actually, you know, take people out of these wetlands and also ensure that they are restored? Because there's one thing taking them away, but restoration is another thing.
Thank you, Ken. What happens is that NEMA does not work alone. NEMA works with what we call the lead agencies. And when we talk about the lead agencies, these are entities, organizations that have the mandate, that are mandated by law to do certain work in of a certain segment of environment. Say, for example, the district local governments are lead agencies because they are supposed to take charge, control, regulate environment in that area. We have the, like Uganda Wildlife Authority, NFA, Ministry of Water and Environment. Those are lead agencies. Now, in terms of what you're saying, capacity, NEMA does not work alone as per the law. NEMA is supposed to work with the lead agencies, and we work with them. So where we cannot reach as NEMA, then we work with the lead agencies. The local governments, we work also with our regional offices based in different areas. We have an office in Hoima, we have in Mbarara, we have in Lira, we have in Mbale. And that is now extending, getting closer to the communities. So that is how, in terms of our capacity to do work, we do not work alone, we work with the lead agencies.
All right. More comments coming in. Rico Rice says, what's the difference between rice growing in Palisa and rice growing in Lukaya by the Chinese? Because I see it not being stopped, yet all are in wetlands. Stabex was spared from Lubiji, but others raised down. Uganda, it says, Uganda does not love its kids. Now, that's the comment that comes in there. One way NEMA can stop and regulate wetlands, or one way NEMA can stop or regulate wetlands encroachment is by regularly publishing on the National Gazette the demarcated areas for wetlands. And then somebody writes and said, yeah, Ken, thank you for hosting NEMA. I reported a case to them of a swamp reclamation in acres here in Kialiwajala. Sino trucks dropping soil every day in a swamp, Kenneth. They gave a major in the army to handle. This was already intimidation outrightly. Shared the location, they came on ground, but I wasn't willing to meet them. They ended up telling me that the project what I complained about was approved by NEMA. Then I said, I asked him to share the environmental certificate. He responded, for what? His tone has changed, so I backed off. It's a huge swamp where tons of soil have been piled. This swamp in Kirunda, Mbata, and connects to Boate. NEMA is selective. That's my testimony. Comment comes in from Chris. Good evening, Spectrum. Why does NEMA do selective application of the law during eviction, Stabex in Lubiji versus the community? 2, why do you destroy flowers instead of leaving them to form the green environment? That is Kamugo Fred Keta in Kira municipality. The flowers I think it's talking about were along the northern bypass. I was also equally shocked. There were some good flowers and trees that were coming up in the wetlands, and they were not owned by anybody. They were greenery in that particular area. But I woke up one day and I found you had cut them down and you didn't plant anything.
Can I respond on that?
Very quickly, sir.
Yeah, Ken, what happens is that when you see the people handling the flowers, they are actually people who begin in a small way and then they continue expanding. They do the backfilling. When you see where they are operating from, they do the backfilling and then they keep expanding slowly. And tomorrow, it becomes somebody's plot. Then you will see a small structure coming up. At the end of it, it's a whole thing.
Very quickly, we have a few seconds to close the show.
Thank you so much. So we've talked about the flowers. You know the road reserve and its purpose.
So they are working in the reserves.
It's not for flower gardens. So
right.
That is something that we need to take note of.
All right. There's a listener who talked about that situation in Buate, Kirunda, Mbata and connects to Bawate, that big wetland, you need to look at it.
We shall
and
follow it
take
up. We
action.
shall follow it up. And
all right. With that, we come to the end of this show. Thank you very much, dear gentlemen from NEMA, for making time to be with us here. I can see you have so many other things to talk about, which means next year, as you launch that campaign, you should find time to come back to Radio 1 and explain more
sure.
of the things in details. Tomorrow, same time, another topic will be on air. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Keno Lillian. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Junior.